Episode 1. The city of Zabrudia does not sleep. It hums. In the golden age of treasure hunting, the imperial capital sits at the center of a world where ambitious young men and women descend into mysterious vault labyrinths, battle creatures called phantoms, and emerge with relics and renown. It is a profession equal parts dangerous and glamorous, and the best hunters are celebrated here like stars. Clans, organized collectives of parties who share resources and support one another, have become the dominant structure, and the most prestigious of them can shape careers with a single nod. On the day that first steps, one of the capital's most respected clans holds a recruitment event at a pub. The hall is so packed it barely breathes. Every hunter in the room is hoping to impress, posture, or outmaneuver someone else. One of the attendees waiting quietly near the back is Cry Andre. He arrived late because he overslept. He is not wearing the clan uniform he sent explicit instructions requiring everyone else to wear. Nobody recognizes him because, as it will later become clear, the person they are all here to impress looks so entirely unremarkable that the mind simply slides off him. He gets into conversation with Ruta Runbeck, a recently promoted level 3 hunter who approaches him simply because he looks approachable in a room full of people bristling with competitive energy. They talk about the event, and Cry points out the party's recruiting, including Arkbrave, whose leader Ark Rodan carries a level 7 rating and has never once accepted a new member through an event like this. Then Ruta asks about the empty table all the way at the back of the hall. Why is nobody sitting there? Cry explains, that is the table of the party that originally founded First Steps. The Grieving Souls. The Grievers, he explains with a calm that borders on boredom, are the reason the event is twice as crowded as it should be. Rumors had been spreading for weeks that they were accepting new members for the first time in years. Every ambitious hunter in the city came hoping to be chosen by the people who built this clan from nothing. The Grievers' table sits empty because their leader overslept and showed up in civilian clothes. Before Ruta can process this, the entire hall descends into fighting, because that is simply what happens when you put dozens of competitive, armed people in a room and add a spark. The spark in this case is Gilbert Bush, level 4, who arrives loudly announcing that he is the strongest and demanding to meet the people worth his time. The resulting chaos levels most of the room. In the aftermath, someone points out that the clan master hasn't arrived yet. Cry raises his hand. An attendant named Tino Shade, level 4, intensely loyal in ways that would be unnerving if she weren't so earnest, immediately materializes at his side and begins trying to chase people away from him. The crowd's reaction to learning this unassuming latecomer is thousand tricks. The level 8 leader of the Grievers ranges from disbelief to shock. Cry's internal reaction is that he is once again going to be sick. He handles the situation with characteristic indirectness. He offers Gilbert a conditional recommendation to Arkbrave. Prove you understand what matters most to a hunter. Gilbert answers without hesitation, never losing, because a weak hunter endangers their party. It is a good answer. Cry tells him, technically accurately, that he himself has never lost a fight in his career. This is true only because he has never actually been in one. He produces a ring relic from his hand. It is called a shooting ring, and he makes a point of mentioning that whoever retrieves it from the chaos can keep it, and tosses it into the crowd. What follows is a scramble. Gilbert wins it. He is direct, aggressive, and not particularly interested in cooperating with anyone. Cry notes, privately, that whoever he picks for Ark's party is largely guesswork. Gilbert seems like someone who, with proper training, will be useful. Cry recommends him. The pub is destroyed. The Explorers Association, which oversees all hunter activity in the capital and issues the requests known as chores when no one else will take them, wants a word. Branch manager Gark Welter, once a feared level 7 hunter himself, now a bureaucrat who somehow manages to look both fond of Cry and perpetually exhausted by him, summons him to the office. Cry arrives genuinely flustered and apologetic, running through a list of reasons why the pub thing was not technically his fault, while also quietly asking for ice cream. Gark cuts through this and hands him a stack of unattractive missions as penance. Cry sorts through them looking for the lowest stakes option. He finds it, a rescue mission. Level 3 treasure vault, a handful of missing hunters, minimal compensation, long contractual binding time. Nobody wanted it. It is a perfect chore. He signs up, plans to hand it to Ark, then discovers Ark is away at a noble engagement indefinitely. He stares at the mission paperwork for a long moment. Then Tino turns up having somehow won back the ring Cry threw into the crowd, because she absolutely chased it down in the chaos with no intention of letting anyone else claim something that belongs to her master. She presents it triumphantly. He tells her she can keep it. It is only a shooting ring after all, and then asks, with a specific kind of casualness that means he has already made a decision, whether she is free right now. She is. She is the most free she has ever been. She has been waiting for him all afternoon. He tells her about the rescue mission. She immediately realizes this is not ice cream and begins cataloging her complaints at volume, which is how Cry learns that the vault in question is the White Wolf's Den, a place with a certain reputation among hunters in the capital. He reread the paperwork on the walk there and noted some details he should have caught the first time. He does not share these with Tino. He hands her the equipment and says they should get moving. The destination is the White Wolf's Den. The people who need rescuing are in there. An impromptu group of 4, Tino, Cry, and 2 others gathered on short notice, is about to walk into a situation that everyone wiser than them declined to take on. Cry is already composing apologies in his head. Episode 2. 6 years ago, the Grieving souls arrived in Zabrudia as a group of teenagers with a promise stitched together out of childhood conviction. They would become treasure hunters. They would reach the imperial capital. They would be the best. What they did not reckon with, or rather, what one of them reckoned with more honestly than the rest, is that talent is not distributed equally. Cry Andre, standing at the entrance to the Explorers Association with his 5 extraordinary friends on their first day in the city, knew even then that he was the ordinary one. So when they registered their party, he chose the name Grieving Souls and drew a skull for the crest, because he had decided if he was going to be dragged along into this life, he was at least going to name it something that reflected how he felt about it. His friends, to their everlasting credit, not only accepted this but convinced themselves it sounded distinguished. The party was born from that contradiction. 5 people who could have been legends on their own, and 1 person who simply refused to leave. Now Cry has dispatched Tino, Gilbert, Greg, and Ruta to the White Wolf's Den on a rescue mission he barely read before signing. He gave Tino leadership. He remains at the clan house telling himself it will be fine. It will not be fine. The first sign of this arrives through conversation. Cry is stopped by a relic shop to have his collection charged. He relies on relics for essentially everything he does in the field, a fact the people around him have learned to treat as a form of genius rather than a crutch. The shop's keeper mentions, almost in passing, that a wayward phantom was spotted on the northern road, attacking a caravan. 3 level 3 guards were present and were still defeated. Witnesses described the creature as wolf-shaped. Cry thinks about the White Wolf's Den. The keeper continues. Reports suggest the vault's phantoms have been growing stronger recently, and there is talk of reclassifying its level upward. A famous level 5 lancer named Rudolph Devu has gone missing inside it along with his entire party. Cry thinks about the fact that he sent level 4 Tino into a vault where level 5 hunters have gone missing. He thinks about the paperwork he did not finish reading. He excuses himself from the shop with tremendous dignity and immediately sprints home to load up every relic he can carry. Eva, the vice clan master of First Steps, and the person who quietly keeps the entire operation functional while Cry is being himself, catches him mid-sprint with armfuls of equipment and observes, calmly, that even a fully calculated trial still seems to be making him worried. Cry tells her he is going for a walk. Eva does not believe him. She asks if he needs anyone to come along. He produces the Night Hiker, a relic capable of moving him at tremendous speed, but which has no steering, no brakes, and no safety features of any kind. Eva identifies it as the relic from the incident that resulted in him being called a human missile. She watches him equip it. She decides not to ask further questions. Meanwhile, inside the White Wolf's Den, Tino has already organized the impromptu group and is functioning far better as a leader than Cry anticipated. She challenged Gilbert to prove himself before the mission began, and the fight that followed revealed something important. Gilbert abandoned his sword against her because he thought the gap in their weapons made it unfair. He lost. He thought about why he lost. The answer, pride without practical wisdom, is something he is visibly processing. What prompted this sequence is worth noting. Gilbert, who had loudly declared himself the strongest and dismissed Cry as someone who looked like he never trained, demanded a fight before he would cooperate. Tino stepped forward and simply handled it. She is level 4 to his level 4, but she trained under Liz Smart, and that particular education has produced results that are not always obvious until someone is face down on the floor. Cry, watching from across the training ground, demonstrated the Purgatorial Sword's capabilities without touching the hilt, a casual display that left Gilbert stunned, before quietly noting that the sword needs better care and handing it back. His point, unstated but perfectly clear, this is who we are. Adapt or don't come. Gilbert comes. The group sets out for the White Wolf's Den. On the road, Tino is telling herself, and partly convincing the others, that every element of this mission is calculated. The choice of party members, the specific vault, even the timing. It is all according to Cry's inscrutable plan. The party composition is not random. Greg's experience, Gilbert's aggression, Ruta's precision as a thief, Tino's combat instincts. Each person was selected for a reason. What Cry is actually doing at this moment is being launched through the night sky like an unguided projectile aboard the night hiker, holding on, reconsidering every choice he has made today. The first phantom they encounter before even entering the vault is not a wolf. It is something wearing Wolf Knight's armor, carrying weapons, and moving with calculated hostility. It is not remotely what the mission description suggested. By the time Cry arrives, the group is inside the vault and has established their first foothold. But the situation ahead of them is more complicated than any of them signed up for. The White Wolf's den is not what it was. Something has changed inside it. Something deliberate, and it is getting worse. Episode 3. The White Wolf's den was built for something that no longer exists. The Silver Moon Wolves, elegant, enormous, dangerous, were hunted to extinction for their fur, and in their absence the land formed a treasure vault around their memory, filling the corridors with phantoms shaped by the lingering grief of what was lost. The passages are wide enough for creatures the size of wolves to move freely, which means a human party, if they move quickly and use the geometry intelligently, has a structural advantage. Tino figures this out. That is worth noting. The group pushing deeper into the vault is not a cohesive party. They met days ago. They have different fighting styles, different temperaments, different reasons for being here. Greg is a veteran who has made a career of knowing when to stop, and who is now being confronted with the gap between careful survival and genuine growth. Gilbert has spent years believing himself to be exceptional, and is discovering that being genuinely strong in isolation is completely different from being useful alongside other people. Ruta is a thief with sharp senses and the patience to watch everything before moving, which makes her the person who quietly prevents things from going worse than they do. Together, they function better than logic would predict. Cry watches this from somewhere that should not be accessible, having arrived through the night hiker in a way that involved no intentional steering and at least one near collision with a vault wall. He is here. He does not announce himself. He watches Tino give orders that her party actually follows, watches Gilbert fight with more cooperation than he looked capable of 2 days ago, and thinks, privately, genuinely, that she is going to be fine. Better than fine. Then they reach the boss chamber, and the situation clarifies significantly. The phantom that commands the inner chamber of the White Wolf's den is not the scaled-up wolf monster the mission description implied. It is armored. It is fast. It carries a weapon and uses it with the kind of tactical intelligence that regular phantoms do not possess. When Tino's group engages it, the fight is hard in a way that strips away any remaining illusions. Greg's weapon breaks. Gilbert's relic sword is out of mana and has been since the duel with Tino, a fact he mentioned but whose full significance only registers now. The party that was supposed to handle this quietly with numbers and coordination is instead trading damage with something that significantly outclasses what a level 3 vault should contain. Tino does not break. What follows is one of those sequences that says more about a person than years of observation could. She does not retreat behind the others. She does not wait for someone to rescue the situation. She takes the hit that was meant to stop the whole party, stays on her feet when she should not be able to, identifies the opening in the boss's posture, and strikes for it with the precision that only comes from hours and hours of training under a teacher who expected her to nearly die from it regularly. She wins the fight. It costs her. She is hurt, and Cry can see exactly how hurt. He has been watching and doing nothing because there was nothing useful he could do. Tino, bleeding and exhausted, looks through the chamber and says aloud, "Master, I did it." There is a silence before he responds. He tells her she did well. It is the most understated thing in the world. She tells him it is because of his guidance. He thinks about all the things he did not teach her. What he actually did was send her somewhere dangerous and trust that the people she trained under had prepared her for it. The outcome is the same. The means are not what Tino believes them to be. A second boss appears. This detail is not in the mission description either. There are 2 of these things. The first one was already at the upper boundary of what this group could handle. The second one arrives fresh, and the party is not. Greg looks at the corridor geometry and says clearly what needs to happen. Tino and Ruta are fast. They can break through. The heavier fighters will buy time. It is a sensible call built from experience and honest assessment of the situation. Tino refuses to leave anyone behind. She repeats, word for word, what she told them at the start of this mission. No one gets used as a shield. No one gets sacrificed. This is not bravado. She means it in a way that requires everyone around her to rise to it. It is at this moment that Cry crashes through the outer wall on the night hiker, having positioned himself above the vault entrance and used the relic's complete lack of navigational control as a weapon. The bosses react to the arrival of something they cannot categorize, something carrying enormous amounts of mana material stored in 17 safety rings, every offensive relic he owns, in a calm expression that does not match the situation at all. He buys the group enough time to reach the passage leading to the exit. He does not defeat the bosses. He does not need to. He makes himself the thing they cannot ignore, leads them in the opposite direction from his party, and then runs. What he actually says to Tino as he moves them towards safety, deliberately matching pace to protect her injured leg, is nothing. No explanation. No strategy briefing. He just stays between her and what is behind them. On the way out, they find the missing hunters. Rudolph Devu and his party are alive, conserving strength in a side passage, waiting for someone to come. Cry distributes what food he thought to bring. A relic bag that stores chocolate, which is the only thing it stores, because that is the sort of relic he finds delightful, and the expanded group moves toward the exit together. Behind them, 2 boss-class phantoms pace the corridors of a vault that should not contain them. Ahead, Cry stares at the passage map in his head and realizes he is genuinely not certain where the exit is. He picks a direction. He walks like he knows. Everyone follows. Episode 4. The White Wolf's Den is a maze. Cry has known this since approximately the moment he entered it, and he has been leading the combined group, his original 4, plus Rudolph Devu and 5 level 5 survivors, in what he has calculated to be the general direction of the exit, while keeping his expression confident and his internal monologue extremely busy. He is taking point because no one thought to ask why the level 8 clan master is doing the scouting instead of the 2 thieves in the party. Tino is being carried at a sustainable pace. Greg and Gilbert are keeping the rear. Ruda checked a map before they entered and quietly informs Cry, not loudly enough for panic, that the direction they have been moving in will not reach the exit. The exit is back through the boss chamber. Cry adjusts his route without breaking stride. This is, somehow, interpreted as confirmation that he knew this all along and is executing a layered strategy. The survivors from Rudolph's party, including a hunter named Hellion who blames himself for the party's predicament, are in poor condition. Cry's chocolate supply is helping, because the relic bag that stores only chocolate is at least full of it, and people who have been trapped without food for days find that remarkable enough to briefly forget their circumstances. What Rudolph's group tells him about what trapped them in the first place is more concerning. It was not the Wolf Knights. A single small phantom, its face entirely covered by what appeared to be a skull, had attacked the level 5 party and dismantled them completely. It moved nothing like the armored wolf creatures. It was precise, economical, and it chose not to finish them when it could have, as though the destruction of their capacity to fight was the actual goal rather than a consequence of combat. Rudolph compares its ability to Thousand Swords. Thousand Swords is Luke Cycle. Luke is one of Cry's childhood friends, a member of the Grieving Souls, a level 6 hunter who fights exclusively with a wooden sword and would genuinely like to cut anyone who stands still long enough. Comparing an unknown phantom to Luke Cycle is not a compliment to the phantom. It is a description of something that should not be inside a level 3 vault. Cry does not let his expression change. He is thinking, quite clearly, that he should have waited for Ark. When the skull-masked phantom finds them in the passage, the response from the combined group is immediate and not particularly effective. Everything they try, physical attacks, coordinated strikes, relics, fails to land cleanly. The phantom moves between them like it is reading the next few seconds ahead of time. Cry puts himself between it and the rest of the group with the safety rings active and enough shooting rings to make any tactical calculation that the phantom might attempt complicated. And then, from nowhere, Liz Smart is in the corridor. Liz Smart is Stifled Shadow, level 6, the fastest thing alive. She is also Citri Smart's older sister, a member of the Grieving Souls, and she has been looking for her apprentice in a vault she was specifically not asked to enter. What she does to the masked phantom happens faster than the survivors can track. They see it. They do not process it. She is standing in a different location than she was, and the phantom has ceased its attack. She hands Cry back the sword relic he dropped somewhere in the vault. She found it on the way in, and demands, with limited patience, to know why everyone is just standing there. Liz then turns her attention to Tino. This moment requires some understanding of context. Tino Shade is Liz's apprentice. Liz is not the sort of teacher who measures growth with patience. What follows is less a reunion than an evaluation delivered at volume, with Liz cataloging every way in which Tino's performance today fell short of what it should have been. She is crying by the end of it. Liz is also, quietly, crying. Neither of them acknowledges the other's state. Cry steps in and tells Liz, calmly and directly, that Tino performed well today. She led the mission. She defeated the boss. She brought everyone home. Liz, startled out of her momentum, asks, did she really? Cry says yes. Yes, she really did. He tells Liz she has also been improving. Her control has clearly developed the ability to stop right before crossing a line in combat. He is proud of her. Liz, because she is Liz, immediately pivots to asking if she can keep the Skullmasked Phantom's remains to study them. Outside the vault, Gilbert stops before the group disperses. He returns the Purgatorial Sword to Cry, declining to keep something he used without permission. He says he is going back to his old party, the one he left, with an apology prepared. He says he learned something from what happened today. The reversible face comes up briefly. The disguise relic Cry usually carries has been broken, which is why he was wandering the recruitment event without his clan uniform, and without the ability to move anonymously in the city. He needs to replace it. This detail is filed away and forgotten in the relief of being out of the vault alive. The group disperses into the evening. Cry, walking back toward the city with Tino at his side, makes a private accounting. The mission was completed. Everyone who went in came out. He did not actually plan any of it. It worked anyway. He is going to be sick about this for days. Episode 5. 3 years ago, Citri Smart asked Cry to hold something for her. She called it Citri's slime. She described it as a biological creation she had been working on, a slime organism with dramatically accelerated evolutionary and adaptive capability. She also mentioned, with the specific casualness of someone stating a minor caveat, that if accidentally released, it could destroy the entire capital. She asked him to keep it in his safe, inside a metallium alloy capsule, undisturbed. The capsule is empty. Cry opened it when he needed a last resort option during the White Wolf's Den situation. The capsule was already empty then. Working backward through the logic, which he does with admirable rigor for someone who is also quietly panicking. The slime got out of the capsule at some point while still inside the safe, and escaped through the building's drain system, because slimes naturally gravitate toward moisture. The safe itself is a relic, dimensionally misaligned with standard space, which should have contained it. The slime adapted. Left is somewhere in the capital. A dangerous magical organism, capable of city-level destruction, is wandering the capital unsupervised. Cry has to find it before anyone else finds it first, and before it grows into something that cannot be managed. He cannot tell anyone why. Meanwhile, Eva Renfide, Vice Clan Master of First Steps, and the person who actually keeps the organization running while Cry is being himself, has compiled intelligence suggesting movement in the capital, not related to the slime, or not obviously related. She hands it to Cry. He reads it and asks, phrased as an innocent question, whether there has been anything unusual in the city lately. Eva offers to investigate immediately. Cry tells her he is probably just worrying over nothing and to take it easy. He goes to check on Tino and Liz's training session instead, which results in him having to physically intervene to stop Liz from shattering every bone in Tino's body in the name of growth. Tino, upon seeing Cry enter, immediately stands up from what appeared to be unconsciousness. Liz calls this miraculous. It is just Tino. Cry calls an end to training, and the two of them leave. The situation developing in the capital has a name he does not yet have, the Akashic Tower, a branch of an outlawed mage association, operating under the leadership of Noctis Cochlear, the Master of Mages, a researcher who was permanently banished from the Empire, is conducting experiments beneath the White Wolf's Den. They have been using a device that taps into the ley lines threading through the bedrock, drawing concentrated mana material into an artificial chamber and using it to modify the Treasury Vault's properties. The elevated phantom strength, the anomalous creatures, the disruptions that have been building for weeks, all of it traces back to this installation. Cry does not know this. He suspects something artificial is involved because the natural explanation does not hold up, but he has no specifics. What he has instead is Sven Anger, leader of Obsidian Cross, who appears to want a conversation. Cry quickly calculates that directing Sven and Obsidian Cross toward Branch Manager Gark and the Association's investigation mission is both useful and gets him out of having to go there himself. He hands off the task, tells Sven to let Gark know he is busy, and retreats. He is not, in any practical sense, busy. He is trying to locate a dangerous escaped slime and avoid accumulating any additional responsibilities until Ark gets back. Ark Rodan is still away on noble business. Cry has been counting on Ark the way a person counts on a solid wall. Ark is capable, reliable, and inspires the kind of trust that Cry genuinely cannot generate through his own direct presence. If Ark were here, none of the current complications would still be current. Ark would have handled the vault investigation, would be charming the nobility, would have someone competent to delegate the slime situation to. Ark is in the capital. He came back while Cry was elsewhere. They just have not managed to be in the same room yet. In the background, the Akashic Tower is making its own calculations. Sophia Black, the Master of Mage's right hand, a researcher of extraordinary ability, has returned from what was described as a vacation and has been informed of the situation. Her assessment of the threat posed by 1,000 Tricks is measured and specific. His intelligence network appears to rival or exceed their own. His decision-making is unpredictable in ways that make defense planning difficult, and the fact that he personally visited the White Wolf's den despite never entering treasure vaults suggests he has already identified more than they would like. She recommends elimination as the cleanest resolution. Noctis Cochlear agrees. Someone is watching Cry in the city. He notices. He lets them leave. He also notices that Citri, who has been away at the Night Palace Vault with other Grieving Souls members on an unrelated mission, has just returned to the capital. Early. Alone. She tells him she had a bad feeling and came back. She says they need to deal with whatever is happening before it gets stronger. She's right about this. She usually is. Episode 6. Branch Manager Gark has been trying to get Cry into a room for days. Cry has been sending other people in his place. This is not evasion. Exactly. It is more that Cry operates on a principle of maximum conservation of personal effort, and walking into a formal meeting about something he only partially understands feels less useful than quietly gathering information until the picture clarifies. Gark, who was once a level 7 hunter and carries the second name War Demon, has the patience of someone who has seen worse than a difficult clan master and the tolerance of someone who has not. He sends for Cry directly. Cry arrives. The conversation about the White Wolf's den confirms what neither of them wants confirmed. The anomalies in the vault are not natural. The Phantom's elevated strength has no geological explanation, and something artificial is operating beneath the area. Gark hands Cry the parameters of a formal investigation deployment. First steps will send hunters. The association will coordinate. Cry's response to this is to ask that the deployment be reduced to half the planned number. He has reasons. He does not fully explain them. The assembled hunters at the briefing, a sizable group, including members of Obsidian Cross, who have already set out ahead, receive this directive with varying degrees of confusion and frustration. In a district of the capital far from the association offices, there is a new ice cream shop. Eva's intelligence suggested that the disappearances happening in the slum quarter might be connected to a recently opened business in the area, and Cry, who also simply wanted ice cream, guides an outing in that direction. The shop is staffed by people who are not ice cream professionals. When Cry appears at the door, the shop closes. Immediately, someone with sharp reflexes is watching from a window, and the lights go out before the group has processed what is happening. Cry tells Liz the shop is closed, and they should go home. Liz accepts this with minor disappointment. They leave. What they did not announce. Inside that shop, in a back room beneath unremarkable decor, is one of the Akashic Tower's field research facilities. The tower's operatives watch 1,000 Tricks appear at their door and close the facility in approximately 40 seconds. This is treated internally as confirmation that he found them specifically, which means their security is worse than they believed. Sophia Black, having returned from her absence, reviews the situation and makes her recommendation. They should fight. The Akashic Tower is not afraid of grieving souls. Their analysis is specific. 1,000 Tricks without his party members is less effective because his value lies in directing capable fighters. Stifled Shadow is strong but specialized. Citri Smart is the real threat, the alchemist whose capabilities they respect enough to call their primary concern. Sophia proposes using the defense systems she has built around their underground installation to neutralize the hunters, and using the transmogrification potion developed there as their primary weapon. Noctis Cochlear agrees. He tells his disciples to follow Sophia's lead. Sophia, quietly, sets her own thoughts in order. The investigation party moves toward the White Wolf's den the following morning. It is substantial in scale, the kind of deployment that would normally include the Grieving Soul's top fighters, if those fighters were present. Ark is still occupied. Liz, who desperately wants to go and has said so at length and with considerable force, is assigned by Cry to a different task in the city. She accepts this as confirmation that he has a specific role planned for her. He does have a specific role. Keeping Liz out of the vault prevents the coordinated investigation from dissolving into chaos. Tino, who was also present for this conversation, reads the situation and volunteers to go alone with Liz. Cry says no. He allows everyone else to proceed. What he tells Sven as the investigation party departs is this: watch for something slime-like. If it appears, treat it as not a normal slime and be cautious. He provides no further information. Sven, who has been operating on faith in Cry's judgment since the White Wolf's Den incident, passes this along. The party is not particularly reassured. At home, Citri returns from the Institute for Relic Research with a small container. She has been working on a specific compound, a substance that kills slimes by attacking the cellular processes unique to their biology. She has also been performing her own analysis of what is happening beneath the vault and has arrived at conclusions that align with what Cry has been piecing together. She knows about the Akashic Tower. She has known for some time, and she has been investigating it independently without telling anyone, because involving others creates exposure she cannot control. She tells Cry, "It is a powerful enemy. They need to stop it before it gains more capability." He nods. She heads back out. He is left in the clan house thinking about a research organization that can modify treasure vaults at will, a missing slime that could destroy the city, and whether there is any version of today where he gets to simply sit down. There is not. But Citri is back, and that changes things. Episode 7. The investigation party reaches the White Wolf's den and finds it changed. The entrance corridors are wider somehow, the walls pushed back as though something has been consuming the stone itself from beneath. The phantoms inside move differently, faster, in formations that should not be possible for creatures without coordination, and the ambient mana reading that Citri's instruments detected on her preliminary sweep is 3 times what the vault should generate independently. Something is feeding it. Sven leads Obsidian Cross through the first chamber with clean efficiency. He is a level 5 fighter whose second name, Steel Wall, is earned rather than decorative. His party trusts him and he trusts them, and the result is an investigation advance that Cry, watching the reports arrive through a relay system he set up before the party departed, finds genuinely impressive. The outer chambers are cleared. The search for the installation source begins. Back in the capital, Cry is not sitting still. He has been moving between 3 simultaneous tasks since morning, connecting them through channels that Citri established, and trying not to let any one problem realize the others exist. The slime situation has narrowed. Eva's street-level intelligence, combined with Drain reports that she pulled without understanding exactly why Cry wanted them, has produced a probable location, a series of connected maintenance tunnels beneath the slum quarter, where several weeks of unusual moisture pooling was recorded. Cry gives the slime-killing compound that Citri prepared to someone he trusts to move fast in tight spaces. That person is Ruta. She does not fully understand what she is carrying or why, but she understands that Cry explained it quietly rather than loudly, which means it is serious, and she moves accordingly. In the vault, the investigation party reaches the lower levels and discovers what has been happening there. The Akashic Tower's installation is not particularly hidden once you are at the right depth. It is a mechanical structure, large enough to require significant construction time, built around the intersection of 3 ley lines. The device tapping them is elegant, technically. Citri, from a sketch Sven sends through the relay, identifies it as a modified version of a theoretical design she wrote about in an academic paper 3 years ago that was never published. This is alarming in a specific way. Someone was watching her work before she was watching them. The tower's response to the investigation party reaching their installation is not to run. They have prepared for exactly this confrontation. The defensive layer Sophia designed is built around the understanding that hunters rely on conventional combat, physical strikes, relic-based techniques, party coordination. What emerges from the installation's deeper chambers to meet the party is not a phantom and not a person. It is a transmogrified creature, something that was once a normal animal, rewritten at the biological level by the potion Sophia spent months developing. It does not fight like a phantom. It does not respond to mana-based attacks the way a phantom would. It takes everything the party aims at it, and simply continues. Greg is the one who figures out the structural weakness. He has been hunting long enough to look for the thing underneath the thing, and what he identifies, a node of concentrated mana material in the creature's chest that is also the source of its unnatural durability, is correct. The problem is reaching it. The creature's exterior defense is the entire point. Gilbert reaches it. What he does is not technically possible for his current level. He has not learned the technique he uses. He has seen it, in fragments, watching people around him over the past few days, and his understanding of combat fundamentals is strong enough that he assembled an approximation from incomplete information. It works once. The node breaks. The creature stops. Gilbert hits the wall behind him with significant force and does not get up immediately. Tino, who was coordinating support throughout the fight, reaches him first. The node's destruction does not end the installation's operation. The ley line tap is still running. Below the investigation party, deeper still, a second chamber is active and has been since before they entered the vault. The relay from Sven stops updating. Cry, watching the last few transmissions arrive at irregular intervals, identifies the moment when the party loses the ability to send messages up. He makes a decision. He tells Liz that he has reconsidered her assignment. She is moving before he finishes the sentence. In the tunnel beneath the slum quarter, Ruta locates the slime. It is larger than Citri's original notes described. The accelerated evolutionary capability has been operating unchecked for long enough to add several developmental stages. It is not hostile, which is the only fortunate element of the situation. It is curious about Ruta in the way that something very large and very adaptable is curious about small, fast things. She applies the compound. The slime, after a moment's consideration, begins to diminish. Ruta sends confirmation through the relay. Cry reads it. He exhales once, fully, and does not tell anyone why. One crisis is contained. A second one is still open, 60 meters below the White Wolf's den, where Sophia Black is watching the investigation party arrive at the true heart of the installation and making her own assessments. She has been ready for this since before they entered. She has been ready, actually, for something larger, for the possibility that Thousand Tricks himself would come. He has not come. He sent his students instead. This gives her the small comfort of a plan still unfolding on schedule. She steps forward. The party sees her for the first time. What she says is not a threat. It is closer to an introduction, the kind a researcher makes when presenting their findings. She has spent a great deal of time on this installation. She is proud of it. She would like, before anything else happens, for someone to understand what it was meant to accomplish. Sven's expression, just before the confrontation begins in earnest, is the expression of a person who came to dismantle an illegal operation and has discovered that the person running it wants to give a lecture first. He lets her finish. He is a professional. Episode 8. Sophia Black's lecture covers, in brief, the following. The Akashic Tower was not founded to destroy anything. It was founded to understand things that the Empire considers dangerous to understand. The natural intelligence latent in phantom biology, the possibility of synthetic mana generation, the gap between what treasure vaults produce naturally and what they could produce under management. Noctis Cochlear, the master of mages, was expelled from the Empire's academic apparatus not because his research was wrong, but because it was right, and the right answers made the wrong people uncomfortable. The installation beneath the White Wolf's den was his life's work executed practically. She built it. She is, she says, not sorry. Sven absorbs all of this with considerable composure. Then he says they are shutting it down. The installation. The experiment. Whatever comes next. Sophia says that is reasonable and attacks him. She is a researcher, which the investigation party correctly identified as meaning she does not fight the way hunters do. What she does instead is apply the transmogrification potion to herself, selectively, in concentrations that alter specific biological systems while leaving her capacity for thought intact. The result is not a monster. It is a person with aspects of a monster, speed, durability, reach, all operating in conjunction with a tactical intelligence that has been analyzing this party's combat patterns since they entered the installation. She has been watching them work for hours. She knows what they do when something charges directly. She knows what they do when it circles. She knows which of them covers for which. What she does not know is which of them Cry prepared specifically for her. That preparation is Tino. The specific thing Cry told Tino before the party departed was not a strategy. It was an observation. A person who modifies themselves with a potion retains their own psychology, which means they make the same decisions they would make unmodified, only faster and harder. Find the decision. The modification becomes irrelevant. Tino was confused by this at the time. She is less confused now. Sophia's decision, under pressure, is always to create distance and reassess. She has been doing this her entire career. Step back, observe, calculate, advance. Tino reads this in her third retreat and stops giving her the distance she is reaching for. She matches every withdrawal with forward pressure, cuts off the angles Sophia is using to reset, and keeps the fight continuous and close, where reach and durability matter less than reaction time. Sophia, for the first time, is fighting someone who is specifically solving for her. She stops retreating. The fight becomes different. It becomes better, in the way that two people solving the same problem from opposite sides can produce something that is almost collaborative, even when they are trying to hurt each other. Greg and the others clear the installation's ancillary systems while the fight proceeds. The device tapping the ley lines requires destroying 3 nodes simultaneously, information that Citri extracted from the academic paper she published and then had to reconstruct backward. They hit all 3. The ambient mana reading begins to drop. The transmogrification effect in Sophia's body, which requires a continuous supply of elevated ambient mana to maintain, begins reversing. She feels this and does not stop fighting. She is not fighting to win anymore. She is fighting to finish something. The notes she memorized before the party arrived, the full research record, everything she built, are in her head and only there. The physical installation can be destroyed. The knowledge cannot. Tino stops the fight not by winning it, but by asking, simply, what was it supposed to do? The installation. If it had run to completion, what would it have produced? Sophia answers her. It is the same answer she gave Sven. She built it to understand things the Empire forbids understanding. But she gives Tino the specific version. She wanted to know if phantoms could think, whether the intelligence behind their behavior is emergent and real, or reflexive and empty. The skull-masked phantom that dismantled Rudolph's party was her prototype. It was not a weapon. It was a test subject. She built it to see what it would do when placed in an environment with problems to solve. What it did was solve problems. She believed it was thinking. Tino does not have an answer to this. She stands with Sophia in the settling dust of the installation's shutdown and does not have an answer, and that seems, to both of them, like the correct response. The party secures Sophia and the two remaining tower disciples present. Sven sends the signal up. Cry, in the capital, receives confirmation that the installation is shut down. He does not immediately celebrate. He is already thinking about where Noctis Cochlear is, because Sophia was here, but the Master of Mages was not. Liz, who has been moving through the vault since Cry reassigned her, and has been looking for something to hit since approximately the same moment, arrives at the installation chamber to find the situation resolved. She looks at the wreckage of the fight, at Sophia in custody, at Tino still standing, and her expression cycles through approximately 4 emotions in 2 seconds. She says Tino took too many hits to the left side. Tino says she knows. Liz says they will fix that. Outside, the vault begins returning to its normal parameters as the mana tap is removed. The phantoms in the upper corridors are already slower, less coordinated, reverting toward the behavior of a standard level 3 vault. The White Wolf's den is not fixed. The structural alterations to the corridors are permanent, and the elevated level creatures created during the experiment's active period will persist until cleared, but it is no longer being fed. The crisis, by every practical measure, is over. Cry reads Sven's full report and thinks about the skull-masked phantom, which they did not recover or destroy, and which is currently unaccounted for. He thinks about where a prototype phantom designed to solve problems might go when the facility that created it is shut down. He will need to ask Sophia about that, when she is in association custody and willing to talk. He also needs to apologize to the ice cream shop that was not, apparently, connected to any of this. Episode 9. In the aftermath of the investigation, the association's formal accounting takes 3 days. Gark Welter manages the debriefs with the efficiency of someone who has done this before and the patience of someone who has definitely not had enough sleep. Sophia Black cooperates selectively. She answers questions about the installation's mechanics with precision and says very little about Noctis Cochlear's current location or intentions. She is not obstructing. She has simply assessed which information creates which outcomes and chosen accordingly. Cry is present for her debrief. He does not lead it. He sits to one side and listens, which is his preferred approach to interrogation. Let someone else ask the questions, watch where the pauses are, note what gets answered quickly and what gets answered carefully. When it ends and Gark looks at him for his summary, he says, "She knows where he is." Gark says, "Will she tell us?" Cry says, "Not yet." They table the question of the Master of Mages' location and move on to consequences. The installation has been documented and dismantled. The vault reclassification request is formally submitted. The White Wolf's Den will be reassigned to level 5, pending the association's review of the elevated level creatures remaining inside. Rudolph DeVue's party files their incident report with the kind of careful language that emphasizes how well they managed the situation and downplays the length of time they spent hiding in a side corridor eating chocolate out of someone else's relic bag. Cry signs their account without amendment. The Skull Phantom is still missing. This problem gets its own separate report, filed under Sophia's research program as a created entity without a registered location. The association's Hunter Dispatch will watch for it. Cry writes a private note to himself, which is to say, to the small journal he carries in the same relic bag as the chocolate, with every behavioral detail Sophia described during her debrief. He reads it twice and puts it away. Away from the association offices, the rest of the capital has been getting on with its own concerns. Gilbert Bush, who submitted his report to the recruitment evaluation as agreed, has been formally recommended by Cry to Ark Brave. Ark, who is finally and completely back in the city, reviews the recommendation with the seriousness he applies to everything. They meet. The conversation is short. Gilbert says he has one condition. He needs to complete something first. Ark waits. Whatever the condition is, it is personal enough that Gilbert does not explain it to anyone else. Ruta Runbeck submits her application to First Steps. She does this quietly, through the normal administrative channel, with no particular fanfare. Eva processes the paperwork and mentions it to Cry. He reads the file, thinks for a moment, and approves it. Ruta is told she has been accepted. Her response is measured in a way that does not quite hide how much it matters. Tino's recovery from the vault is going well, which is to say she began training again on day 2, and Liz had to physically prevent her from doing anything that would compromise the healing in her ribs. The result is a form of supervised rest that satisfies neither of them but produces, as a side effect, the longest consecutive conversation Tino and Liz have had since Tino passed her entrance trial. Liz describes it later to Citri as an argument. Citri asks what they argued about. Liz says she is not sure they were arguing about the same thing the whole time. Ark visits the First Steps clan house on the 4th day. He and Cry have the kind of conversation that people who have known each other for years conduct, mostly in what they do not say. Ark acknowledges, without stating it, that Cry managed a more complicated situation than he was expecting from a level 3 vault, and Cry acknowledges, without stating it, that he would greatly prefer this never happen again. Ark asks about the ice cream shop. Cry explains that it was a coincidence that a tower facility happened to be operating behind what appeared to be an ice cream shop, and that the actual ice cream shop is down the road and remains open and has nothing to do with anything. Ark decides not to pursue this. What Ark actually came to discuss is something Cry already knows is coming. The noble situation that called Ark away from the capital has not fully resolved. There is a family, the Valents, an old line with genuine influence in the Imperial Court, who have been attempting to contract the Grieving Souls for a mission that Ark has reviewed and described to Cry, quietly, as something he does not yet fully understand. The parameters are unusual. The location is outside the city. The request comes through channels that Ark trusts, which is the reason he has not simply declined it. Cry asks what the vault is. Ark says it is not a vault. There is no vault involved. Cry takes the document that Ark hands him and reads it. His expression does not change. He reads it again. He puts it down and asks whether Ark verified this. Ark says he did. Outside the window, the capital goes about its normal evening business. Hunters coming home from vaults, relic shops closing, the smell of food from the district below the clan house. Cry looks at the document a 3rd time and thinks that the particular flavor of complicated that seems to locate him reliably is at it again. He tells Ark he will handle it. He says it the way someone says they will handle the weather. Ark, who has known Cry since they were teenagers, says nothing. He picks up his coat. He is at the door when Cry calls after him, not about the Valent mission, just to ask, genuinely, if Ark is all right. If the noble situation was hard. Ark says it was what it was. He thanks Cry for asking. After he leaves, Cry folds the Valent document carefully and places it in the relic bag beside his journal and his chocolate. He will need to show it to Citri before he shows it to anyone else. Episode 10. The Valent document describes a location 3 days east of the capital called the Warden's Rest. It is not, as Ark confirmed, a treasure vault. It is a ruin, the remains of a garrison station built during a war that ended 80 years ago, abandoned since, and now reportedly the site of activity that the Valent family has described as phantom-related without providing specifics. The contracted objective is assessment and, if possible, elimination of whatever is responsible for the disruptions. What the document does not explain, and what Citri extracts from the Valent family's own historical records through a combination of archival access and targeted inquiry, is that the Warden's Rest sits atop a natural ley line convergence point. The same kind of convergence the Akashic Tower was artificially replicating under the White Wolf's Denver. The tower's interest in manufactured ley line intersections makes considerably more sense if there are natural ones available elsewhere, and if one of those natural ones happens to be in territory adjacent to a noble family that the tower has been in contact with. Cry reads Citri's analysis and asks whether she thinks the Valents are knowingly involved. Citri says, that is the question. The party that travels to the Warden's Rest is small. Cry, Citri, Liz, and Tino, the core of what remains of the original Grieving Souls roster available in the city, plus an apprentice who has now defeated 2 boss-class enemies and whose presence Liz has stopped framing as a concession. They take the Eastern Road in civilian clothing, without clan insignia, on the administrative justification that Cry filed this as a personal assessment mission not yet formally contracted, which means it does not appear in the association's deployment log. If the situation requires it, Gark will receive a report after the fact. Gark will not be pleased by this arrangement. Cry has already drafted the apology. The journey is the first time in weeks that this particular group of 4 has been in close proximity without an active emergency. The result is something that approximates normalcy in the way that a painted window approximates sunlight. It has most of the shapes right. Liz and Citri argue about technique for 6 hours, which is their version of comfortable. Tino walks alongside Cry at a pace that is slower than her usual, still protecting her left side without thinking about it, and he adjusts his pace to match without mentioning it. She asks him, somewhere on the 2nd day of travel, whether he has ever been to the Warden's Rest before. He says no. She asks how he knows what to expect there. He says he is not sure he does. She thinks about this for a while and says, "Does that worry you?" He says, "Yes." She is quiet for a moment, then says that she thought he always planned for everything. He says that he tries to plan for the most likely outcomes, and also for the outcomes that would be worst if they were surprises. But some situations are new. He tells her this is one of them. She says, "What do we do then?" He says, "We go carefully, and we trust the people we came with." On the morning of the third day, as the ruins of the Warden's Rest come into view through a tree line, Citri stops walking. She holds up an instrument she constructed from 3 relic components, calibrated specifically to detect abnormal mana gradients. The reading it produces makes her close her eyes for a second. The ley line convergence at the Warden's Rest is not dormant. Something has been drawing on it. The withdrawal pattern is not mechanical. It does not match the device Sophia built, or any variation of that design that Citri has cataloged. It is organic. Whatever is using the convergence point is not a machine. Liz asks what that means. Citri says, it means something is living there. Inside the ruins, which are large enough to have housed a garrison of 200 soldiers at full capacity and are now open to the sky in sections where the roofing has collapsed, the signs of habitation are specific and strange. The phantoms in the area are not behaving as phantoms normally do. They are in the perimeter of the ruins, but not inside them. They are staying outside a boundary that does not correspond to any physical structure. Something in the center of the ruins is keeping them out. The group moves inward carefully. The ley line reading intensifies. The ambient mana, accumulated over decades of natural convergence without a vault structure to organize it, has saturated the central courtyard of the garrison to a degree that Citri's instruments can barely quantify. It does not feel hostile. It does not feel organized. It feels old, in the way that some places feel old, not just long-standing, but accumulated, layered, weighted with time. In the courtyard, they find the skull-masked phantom. It is sitting. This is the first unusual element. It is not doing anything that could be categorized as threatening. It is sitting in the courtyard of the Warden's Rest with its arms on its knees, in the posture of something waiting, or resting, or both. When the group enters the courtyard, it looks up. The skull mask reads nothing. Below it, Tino thinks she can see something moving, a flicker of expression, or a biological process that resembles one. She's not sure. Liz's hand is on her weapon. Citri's instruments are running. Cry takes one step forward and says, simply, "We are not here to fight you." The phantom does not move, does not attack. Cry watches it. Sophia said it was designed to solve problems, that it was a test subject, built to think. Whatever it has been doing in the ruins of the Warden's Rest for the weeks since the installation shut down, alone, in a convergence point full of unstructured mana, it has been doing something. The courtyard, Citri notices, is not simply saturated, it is organized. The mana is arranged. Not mechanically, differently, more like a decision than a system. Cry says, "Did you do this?" The skull phantom looks at the courtyard, and then back at him, and does not answer in any language. But the looking is specific. Liz says, "It understood you." No one disagrees. Episode 11. The skull phantom does not have a name. This is the first problem, and also, somehow, the smallest one. Over the course of an afternoon in the Warden's Rest courtyard, with Citri's instruments running continuously and Liz maintaining a vigilant stance, she refuses to relax regardless of how long the situation remains calm. A working understanding develops. The phantom communicates through arrangement, objects, positions, patterns in the ambient mana that Citri can interpret with enough attention. It is not a language. It is something adjacent to intent made visible. Tino, who spends most of the afternoon sitting cross-legged on the ruined stone 3 meters from the phantom, because that was the closest it seemed comfortable with, says later that it reminded her of watching someone try to explain a dream. What it communicates, approximately, is this: the installation shut down. The facility was gone. It had nowhere to return to and nothing in its design that specified where to go next. It found the ley line convergence through the same process a plant finds sunlight, not logic, not memory, just orientation towards something its biology needed. It has been here since. It has been working with the mana in the courtyard because that is what it does. It solves things. There was no problem to solve, so it worked on the mana, organizing it the way Sophia's research described organizing it, because that was the function it was built toward. Nobody asked it to. Nobody told it to stop. Cry listens to Citri's interpretation of all this, asks 2 clarifying questions, and goes quiet for a while. The question he is sitting with is not new. It is the same one Sophia raised in the installation, the one Tino did not have an answer for. Whether the intelligence is real, whether what is behind the skull mask is thinking, or something that resembles thinking so closely the distinction has become academic. He decides the distinction is not the decision he needs to make right now. The decision he needs to make is what happens to this phantom today, in this courtyard, with the Valent family's contracted mission presumably expecting an elimination report. He asks the phantom directly, "Do you want to leave here?" The arrangement of objects shifts. The mana in the courtyard moves. Citri watches the pattern and says, carefully, "I think that is a no, and I think there is a reason for it. The reason, which takes another hour to establish, is that the convergence point requires maintenance. Left unmanaged, the accumulated mana in a natural ley line intersection becomes unstable, not immediately dangerous, but over months, increasingly likely to produce spontaneous phantom formation, structural anomalies in the surrounding area, the precursor conditions for a treasury vault forming whether anyone wants one there or not. The Warden's Rest will become a vault regardless. The Skull Phantom has been delaying that process, preventing it. In fact, what it has been doing with the courtyard mana is not simply organizing. It is balancing, drawing off the excess into patterns that dissipate harmlessly rather than accumulating further. Citri says, it is functioning as a natural regulator. Liz says, is it doing this on purpose or by accident? Citri says, those categories may not apply. Cry looks at the ruins of the garrison, the sky through the broken roof, the phantom sitting in the center of a convergence point it arrived at by instinct, and has been maintaining for weeks without instruction or reward. He thinks about what Sophia said, that she built it to see what it would do when placed in an environment with problems to solve, that it solved them, that she believed it was thinking. He decides to write a report that is accurate. This creates a problem. An accurate report involves telling Gark that the contracted mission has been completed. The disturbances at the Warden's Rest have a source, and that source has been identified, while also recommending that the elimination parameter be suspended pending association review, on the grounds that the entity responsible for the disturbances is also responsible for preventing a significantly larger disturbance from forming naturally. The legal status of a thinking phantom created by a banned research organization operating under a mage who is still at large is, not to put too fine a point on it, completely undefined. Tino asks what happens if the association decides to proceed with elimination anyway. Cry says he does not know. He says the report will include Citri's full analysis of the convergence point, the behavioral record from today, and a formal request for the association to consult with the academic institute before making a determination. He says he will make the same request to the Valents personally. Liz says, and if they do not listen? Cry says, then we have a different conversation. He says it with the same calm he uses for everything. But Liz has known him for 15 years and recognizes the specific texture of it, the calm that is not indifference but decision. She lowers her hand from her weapon for the first time since the courtyard. She looks at the phantom. She says, grudgingly, it is well constructed. The phantom looks at her. Below the skull mask, that flicker again. They camp in the outer garrison building for the night, because the return journey is 3 days and they arrived in the afternoon. Citri runs instruments through the night and produces 18 pages of notes. Cry writes the report by lamplight, carefully. Tino sleeps earlier than she wants to and later than she thinks she did. Liz does not sleep. She sits at the entrance to the outer building with her sword across her knees, watching the tree lean, and once, in the early hours, she looks back at the courtyard where the phantom is still sitting, still working, still balancing. She does not say anything. She looks for a long time, then turns back to the tree lean. On the first morning of the return journey, Cry pauses at the edge of the ruins and looks back. He says nothing. Citri stands beside him. Eventually she asks, what are you thinking? He says, about what Sophia said, about whether it was thinking. She asks, what do you believe? He says, I believe it matters whether we act as though it is. She considers this for a long time. Then she starts walking. He follows her. Episode 12. The report reaches Gark 2 days before the group does. Cry sent it ahead via relay from a way station on the Eastern Road, which gave the branch manager time to read it thoroughly, read it again, and have a lengthy internal conversation with himself about what, exactly, the legal framework for a situation like this looks like. The answer is, there is no legal framework. The Empire's classification systems for phantoms were written during the Consolidation era and have not been substantively revised since. They do not include the category of phantom created by a human researcher, maintained by the entity itself, performing a function beneficial to regional stability, and assessed by a level 8 hunter as warranting review before elimination. Gark writes a request to the Academic Institute. He also writes a message to the Valent family explaining that the contracted mission has been completed in a modified form, and that formal documentation is pending association review. He writes both of these before Cry arrives. because Gark has been managing Cry for long enough to know that having things already in motion when Cry walks in the door makes the conversation faster and more productive. When Cry arrives and finds both messages already drafted, he says, "Thank you." Gark says, "You owe me a full debrief. Sit down." The debrief covers the Warden's Rest, the Skull Phantom, the convergence point management, and Citri's analysis of what the natural ley line would produce without intervention over the following year. Gark asks pointed questions about the transmogrification research, about Sophia Black's current cooperative status, and about whether Cry has any information regarding Noctis Cochlear's location that he has not yet included in an official report. Cry says, honestly, that he has suspicions rather than information. Gark says that suspicions filed as suspicions are still useful. Cry notes that the Skull Phantom, during its weeks at the Warden's Rest, organized the ambient mana and patterns that Citri partially recognized, patterns with structural similarities to Sophia's published theoretical work, which suggests the Phantom may have internalized more of its creator's methodology than Sophia realized when she described its capabilities. Gark writes this down. The conversation also covers something Cry raises at the end, after the formal content has been addressed, the Akashic Tower's broader pattern of operation. The installation was not an isolated project. Sophia cooperated with the installation's mechanics because she was proud of it, but she said almost nothing about the tower's other activities, and what little she implied suggested the White Wolf's Den was one of several simultaneous efforts. Gark asks whether Cry believes more installations exist. Cry says, "I believe we should act as if they do." This becomes the seed of what Eva will later formalize as a systematic intelligence review, a broad-scope sweep of anomalies reported across the capital's Treasury Vault network, looking for patterns that match what the tower produced at the White Wolf's Denver. The review takes time and resources, and most of it will not surface anything. But the ones that do surface something will matter. Meanwhile, the Velants respond to Gark's message in a way that requires a meeting. The Velant family's representative who arrives at the association is not the family head. She is the second daughter, introduced as Marina Velant, and she carries the document that formally contracted the Grieving Souls for the Warden's Rest mission along with a second document that Cry recognizes as a petition to the association's legal division. She is asking for a formal designation review for the Skull Phantom. Not elimination, designation. A legal status. Something that places the entity in a recognized category with defined rights, protections, and responsibilities. The Velant family knew about the convergence point. They have known about it for years, and they have been watching the natural mana accumulation build toward critical levels, and when reports reached them of a phantom in the ruins that appeared to be managing the process, they did not report it to the association immediately. They contracted the Grieving Souls specifically, under parameters they chose carefully, because the outcome they wanted was not elimination. They wanted an assessment by someone they trusted to see clearly. Cry looks at Marina Velant for a long time. Then he says, "Why us?" She says, "Because everyone who has worked with Thousand Tricks says the same thing. That he sees what is actually happening instead of what the situation implies." Cry does not respond to this directly. He asks her to describe how long the family has been aware of the convergence point's instability. She answers. He asks what their interest in a successful designation outcome is. She answers that too. The ruins of the Warden's Rest are Velant family land, and a naturally forming treasury vault on family land creates legal complications that a formally designated entity managing the site does not. She is honest about this. It is not purely altruistic. He says, there is nothing wrong with the reason being practical. He says the Phantom's behavioral record supports the petition. He says he will file a supplementary report attesting to the Warden's Rest assessment in whatever format the legal division requires. She thanks him. She is leaving when she adds, almost as an afterthought, "My family received a visit 3 weeks ago from a man who described himself as an academic researcher. He asked about the convergence point. We declined to speak with him. We did not report this." Cry says, "What did he look like?" She describes Noctis Cochlear precisely enough that there is no question. He thanks her and says the association will follow up. He waits until she has left the building before he tells Gark. Gark says, 3 weeks ago. Cry says, before the White Wolf's Den mission. They are quiet for a moment. Gark asks, did he already know about the Warden's Rest when he decided the den was expendable? Cry says he does not know. He thinks it is possible. He thinks Sophia's cooperation during her debrief was calculated to be genuinely useful on the points she chose to address, while obscuring the points she chose to omit, and that the Warden's Rest may be one of the omitted points. He thinks the Master of Mages is still in motion. He thinks what they have addressed so far is a part of something that is not finished. Gark says, what do you want to do about it? Cry says, keep the investigation open, and keep Sophia talking. Outside the window, the capital has an ordinary evening. Hunters come home. Relic shops close. The ice cream shop, the actual one, down the road from the coincidental tower facility, is still open and has a short queue. Cry notes it on his way out and makes a mental note. Some things are still exactly what they appear to be. Episode 13. 3 weeks after the warden's rest, the association's legal division delivers its preliminary finding on the designation petition. The Skull Phantom does not fit any existing category, and the division has referred the matter to the Imperial Charter Review Board, which has not met for 11 years and will require a majority of its members to agree that the case warrants convening. Marina Vellant's response to this is to begin contacting each board member individually. The Vellant family is patient in the way that old families are patient, measured in seasons rather than weeks. Gark files the Phantom's behavioral record as supporting evidence and tells Cry the legal process will take as long as it takes. Cry says, as long as it's moving. Gark says, it is moving. This is the most the situation can offer right now, and both of them know it. The Skull Phantom is still at the Warden's Rest, still managing the convergence point, still balancing the mana accumulation that will become a genuine problem if it is removed before a replacement system is established. Citri, who has visited twice in the intervening weeks, once with Cry, once alone, has been running extended observations and has produced research notes that she is quietly considering how to publish. The academy that expelled Noctis Cochlear for asking dangerous questions is, she feels, unlikely to welcome a paper about a thinking phantom. She is considering other venues. The grieving souls are not, on balance, in a worse position than they were at the start of all of this. They are in a considerably more complicated one. Ark Rodan holds a party meeting at his residence. His parties are held at his residence because it is larger and he has better furniture and he enjoys hosting, which is one of the things about Ark that cannot be attributed to his hunter capabilities but matters just as much. The people in the room are the grieving souls minus the members who are away on other assignments, plus Tino, who has been tacitly included in most things for 2 months now, and plus Ruta, who is new enough that being included in a party meeting at Ark Rodan's house makes her sit extremely still and breathe carefully. The agenda is ostensibly a debrief. In practice, it is something that this group does not do often because they have all been moving too fast in different directions to hold still long enough for it. A reckoning of where things actually stand. What they know about the Akashic Tower, 1 installation dismantled, 1 lead researcher in custody, the Master of Mages at large, and last confirmed in the vicinity of the Warden's Rest before they reached it. What they do not know, where he is now, what the tower's other active projects are, whether the White Wolf's Den and the Warden's Rest convergence point were the extent of the tower's local interest or simply the visible portion of it. What the systematic anomaly review that Eva is coordinating has produced so far. 3 vault irregularities in the capital's surrounding region that require investigation, none of them confirmed tower-related, one of them concerning enough that Gark has already flagged it. Citri says the Master of Mages research has a direction. Everything he pursued, synthetic mana generation, phantom intelligence, natural convergence points, is pointing at something specific. She has been mapping the theoretical trajectory of his work for weeks. She believes she knows what he is trying to build, and she believes it is significantly more consequential than what they have addressed so far. She does not say what it is yet. She is not certain enough, and she is not willing to be wrong about something this size. She says she needs more time. Ark says, how much time? Citri says, I will tell you when I know. This is accepted. This is the way the grieving souls work. Trust is not required to be explained, only demonstrated consistently enough that the explanation becomes unnecessary. Citri has been demonstrating it for 15 years. After the formal agenda, the party disperses into smaller conversations. Liz and Citri drift to opposite ends of the room and conduct separate independent discussions that are functionally the same discussion approached from opposing directions. Ark speaks with Greg about the elevated veteran's future plans. Greg has been considering a shift from active vault hunting to a training and assessment role, and Ark has been thinking about how First Steps develops its newer hunters, and there is a conversation waiting between those 2 thoughts that has not been started yet, but will be soon. Ruta speaks mostly to Tino, which is the direction Ruta tends to move toward when she does not know how to behave in a room, toward the person who has always seemed to understand what it is to be trying to figure something out. Cry, who has been present and quiet for most of this, ends up standing near the window that looks out over the capital's middle district. Ark joins him there, which is a specific choice. Ark joins people when he wants to speak with them, and he does not do it loudly. He asks Cry, are you all right? Cry says, I think so. I am not sure I would know. Ark says that is probably fair. He says he has been thinking about what the last few months look like from the outside, not the external view, not the way the association or the capital sees the grieving souls. but the specific view of someone who has known Cry since they were both young enough to think the capital was going to be simpler than it is. He says, "You sent people into situations you could not fully control, and they came back. Every time." Cry says, "Some of that was luck." Ark says, "Some of it was. Some of it was not." Below the window, the capital does what it always does, moves forward, 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 full of people who came here for something and are finding that what they find is not quite what they intended. That is, the narrator who opened this story noted the exact nature of this place. It is a city of hunters. They go looking for things, and they come home changed by what they find, which is not always the same as what they were looking for. Tino, who has walked to the end of the hall with Ruta and is now standing at a different window looking at a different piece of the same city, thinks about the beginning of the season, the pub, the clan event, the job board, the paperwork she picked up without reading fully. She thinks about the White Wolf's den and the corridor geometry and the moment she decided she was not going to leave anyone behind. She thinks about the installation and Sophia and the question without an answer. She thinks about the courtyard. She says to Ruta, "Do you think it knows we are still thinking about it?" Ruta says, "The phantom?" Tino says, "Yes." Ruta is quiet for a moment. She says, "I think it is probably thinking about something else entirely. It has its own problems." Tino considers this and decides it is the most reassuring possible answer. What the Skull Phantom is doing, at this exact moment, in the courtyard of the Warden's Rest, cannot be confirmed. Citri's instruments are running, recording, generating data that will fill another 18 pages of notes that she will eventually assemble into something she can show people. The ambient mana in the convergence point is balanced within parameters Citri described as better than a natural regulator would produce, which means whatever the Phantom is doing, it is getting more precise over time. Whatever is behind the skull mask continues its work. The capital continues its own. Cry, standing at the window with Ark, eventually says, "I want the next mission to be simple. Something with a clear objective and a manageable threat level and no philosophical implications." Ark says, "I will see what I can find." He says it with the tone of someone who will genuinely look and who expects, based on accumulated evidence, not to find it. Outside, the evening settles over Zabrudia. The great age of treasure hunting continues. It is not the simplest life in the world. It is, for the people who have chosen it, the only one that makes sense. End of Season 1.